Mothers and fathers, sisters, brothers, and children. A heroic police officer and everyday heroes. Colorado and the nation mourning the deaths of 10 people who lost their lives in Monday's mass shooting at a supermarket in Boulder. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino.
And I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. At home, they are
heartbroken.
Hard story. Yeah, it sure is. Heartbroken families and friends trying to remember again, the vibrant lives that were stolen by a single act of violence. Investigators describing the suspect as a troubled young man, susceptible to rage at times, paranoia, and delusions. Today's focus turning to memorials for the victims. Jonathan Hunt picks up our coverage live from the West Coast on this. Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning, Bill. They were all of us, or any one of us, working, shopping for dinner, just living until they weren't. These are the 10 victims of the mass shooting, the youngest 20 years old, the oldest 65. Among them, Kevin Mahoney, whose daughter Erica posted this picture with her father at her wedding in 2020, saying her dad, quote, represents all things love, and adding, quote, I'm so thankful he could walk me down the aisle. Energetic and charismatic, according to her family, who also said she had been trying to lock the store doors to keep everyone safe after hearing the first shots fired in the parking lot. Denny Stong also worked at the store. At 20, he was the youngest of the victims, a fan of music and motorcycles. His longtime friend wrote on a GoFundMe page for Stong's family, quote, some people make decisions that lead to their deaths, which allows me to process it more easily. He did nothing wrong and deserved this in no way at all. Eric Talley was the first police officer on scene, running into danger as others ran away from the sound of gunfire. He joined the Boulder Police Force in 2010, described by colleagues as an outstanding officer. He leaves behind 7 children, ages 7 to 20. 6 others also died, and graphic video from the scene seems to speak to the random choice of victims by the shooter. Some shot in the parking lot as they presumably walked to or from the store. Another shot just inside the doorway. All of them just going about their daily business until the day and their lives came to such a sudden and violent end.
Thank you, Jonathan
Bill?
Hunt, leading our hour there from the West Coast. Thank you, Jonathan. A lot to go through on this. Why don't you start?
Well, the Ricky Olds, who is one of the young women that was killed, she had worked at the store for 6 years. I listened to a sound from her this morning, her mother, actually, and sister, who they knew immediately that they were very, very, very worried, because as soon as they heard it was at that store, she was a manager there, and unfortunately she was one of the victims.
Yeah. It's been determined that he bought this gun about 6 days before the massacre, and the Atlanta shooter bought the gun.
A lot of questions about how and why.
Yeah, that's right. Minutes before that, the New York Post cover goes to the following. It is one word, top of the fold there, top of the page: lunacy. We have a quote here from one of the wrestling teammates. So he was 21, right? From back in high school. A gentleman by the name of Dayton Marvel. He says his senior year during the wrestle-offs to see who makes varsity, he actually lost his match, quit the team, and yelled out in the wrestling room that he was like going to kill everybody. Nobody believed him. We were just all kind of freaked out by it, and nobody did anything about it. That whole thing about him having a quick temper and turning on a dime was a sentiment that had been shared by a lot of people that knew him. Senator
John Kennedy was on Fox News Primetime last night. He had this to say.
You're not going to stop the killings until you stop the killers. But you don't stop drunk drivers by getting rid of all sober drivers, which is what many of my Democratic friends want to do with respect to the Second Amendment. In my judgment, we do not need more gun control. We need more idiot control. Basically, the Democratic position is that if a bad guy shoots a cop, it's the gun's problem. If a cop shoots a bad guy, it's the cop's fault.
One of the things about this also is that the family apparently knew that he had some mental health issues. They took the gun away from him a couple of days beforehand because he was playing with it. They didn't like that, but they gave it back to him.
Mm-hmm. They also talked about him having a dark side, and I mean, that Could be the case, but how do you make the jump from that to what happened 2 days ago? There's a report in the New York Times that broke last night about this gentleman, 21-year-old killer, this killer, I should say, age 21 from Arvada, Colorado, was under investigation of some sort. He was on the radar for the FBI. Whether it was him directly or an associate of his, that report's out there. There's not a lot of detail about it. But something that we're going to look into, and we'll definitely have questions.
We'll be talking to the governor of Colorado.
Yes. President Biden, you know, has already called for gun reform. When former White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer joins us in a few moments, we'll bring that topic up with him and a lot more. So that is the state of the game right now after we watch 10 people get massacred in a grocery store in Colorado. 5 minutes past, there is this now from Senator Cruz.
Last month, over 100,000 illegal aliens were detained at the border, and it's getting worse. We're seeing in particular more and more kids, unaccompanied kids, young children, kids in cages, as the media told us for 4 years relentlessly during Donald Trump. Well, there are a lot more kids in cages right now, and the Biden administration doesn't want anyone to know this.
The Biden administration finally caving to the intense pressure, granting limited media access to a single holding center for migrant children. That's happening later today in Carrizo Springs, Texas. Meanwhile, senior White House officials are set to visit Mexico and Guatemala tomorrow in a bid to stem the overwhelming surge of migrants crossing the border in the middle of a pandemic. Thomas Homan is former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He's a Fox News contributor. It's good to have you. I want to have you listen to another piece of sound from Vice President Harris about the border.
Will you and the president be going down to the border anytime soon?
At some point, absolutely, we will go down to the border, and I've been down to the border. And our Secretary of the Homeland Security, Alex Mayorkas, has been down there twice. Senior administration officials have been down there. And yes, we will go.
So there have been these visits, Tom, but then the visits don't translate into any sort of change in policy, at least not yet.
Yeah, you know, they can make all the trips to the border they want. Until they undo the damaging policies of the Biden administration, things aren't going to change. Now, you just mentioned they're going down to Mexico and Guatemala, meet with those officials, try to come to some agreements. I'd like to remind them, President Trump had agreements with Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Mexico that they tore up within 2 weeks. Why they would tear up agreements with other countries that are the source of illegal migration, an agreement that would help stem the flow of illegal immigration, is just ridiculous. They're in such a hurry undoing everything Trump, is that they put themselves in this crisis. And one thing, Ted Cruz was exactly right what he said, but I want to add one more thing what Ted Cruz says. Yeah, 100,000 a month, but there's over 1,000 a day. Border Patrol estimates 1,000 a day are getting away because of sensor traffic, camera traffic, drone traffic, entries that they can't respond to because they're so busy with family units. So there's over 30,000 that are getting by the Border Patrol in a month. Who are they? Do they have COVID? Are they criminals? Are they carrying drugs, fentanyl, and opioids? That's what makes this a national security crisis.
Mayorkas worked the border issue for Obama for 7 or 8 years. He knew the plan, the policy once implemented, what's working, what's not. But you're saying the only reason why they changed the law with Mexico, or the agreement with Mexico, the only reason they changed the agreements with Central American countries is because Donald Trump had agreement with them? If that's the case, they knew what the fall-on effect would be. So we've been asking people every time they come on our air, why? If you know eventually how this is going to turn out, why do it? Answer that, sir.
I wrote an op-ed in June of last year, 8 months ago, and I said this was going to happen. I called every one of these things were going to happen because the promises Biden was making during the campaign. And I've said on numerous shows, this isn't by accident, this is by design, because Joe Biden was the vice president in 14-15 during the family surge. Alejandro Mayorkas was the deputy secretary. I met with him numerous times. We talked about what causes surges and how do we end it. How do we end it in 14-15? We built thousands of detention beds. We detained people. We detained them until they saw a judge. 90% lost their cases. ICE removed them. We took away the enticements. What are they doing now? The complete opposite by design. They're not detaining people. They're releasing them as quick as they can. ICE has been gutted. They're not deporting anyone. And they keep offering more and more enticements, just like yesterday. Now we're going to process them and not give them a court date, and we'll just leave it up to them to show up at court someday. The enticements just keep added. They're doing exactly the opposite of what they know will stop this surge. That's why I said this is not incompetence. This is not a mistake. This is by design. This is what open borders look like. Joe Biden has sold out this country and our national security and our border security to win an election. There's no other excuse. And they get on TV every day and lie about it, saying it's not a crisis. But if it is a crisis, it's President Trump's fault. President Trump gave us the most secure border in my career, which spanned almost 35 years. They tore it apart in 2 weeks. What I would like from this administration is a little integrity. Get on national TV and tell the truth to the American people. They know what the truth is, and it's almost embarrassing to hear them deny it, then try to flip it over to President Trump, who gave us the most secure border I've ever seen.
All right, Tom Homan, look forward to hearing what you have to say after the press conference tomorrow, because no doubt this is going to come up. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll be watching.
I don't need to wait another minute, let alone an hour, to take common sense steps that will save the lives in the future, and to urge my colleagues in the House and Senate to act.
President Biden calling on Congress to pass gun reform after the massacre in Boulder, the country's second mass shooting in less than a week. With us now, Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary and a Fox News contributor. Ari, good morning to you, and thank you for your time today. You just want to tap into your big brain a little bit about what to make of this now, Ari. What's on your mind?
Bill, I think this is going to be the issue that breaks the Senate. I think that when it comes to the core, the heart that leads the Democratic Party, there are two issues. One is identity politics. The second is gun control. It is so deep and fervent inside the Democratic Party that gun control is the answer. They will break the filibuster over this. I don't think they have any choice. The base demands it. They demand action. When they say thoughts and prayers are not enough, you think the filibuster is? So I think they're going to push gun control. They're not going to seek a bipartisan compromise, as Senator McConnell just discussed. Instead, they're going to try to get through whatever they can get through on 50 votes, and this will be the issue that they challenge the filibuster over.
Wow, quite a statement there. Another statement, President Obama came out immediately. We can overcome opposition by cowardly politicians and the pressure of a gun lobby that opposes any limit on the availability of anyone to assemble an arsenal. We can and we must. On the filibuster, though, Manchin put together that gun legislation with Pat Toomey 8 years ago. Right? That's on the heels of a number of mass shootings. Manchin said he's not on board the idea that was floated yesterday. Does that put a stop to your theory?
Well, because I think if they have 49 for it and Manchin's the 50th, just watch the pressure on Manchin. Remember, Manchin also said he would only support a bipartisan COVID bill. And of course, there was a partisan COVID bill and he supported it. So Manchin is always an open question. I'm not sure I would take him at his word, particularly when the pressure mounts on the core issue that defines the modern day Democratic Party. As I said earlier, gun control is one of the things that makes a Democrat's heart beat.
Well, we're going to be watching for that. Ari, thank you so much for coming on today. If you're right, wow, that portends a lot. Thanks, Ari. Nice to see you. 14 minutes past the hour.
Thank you.
I think it could be right. Wild spring break crowds causing chaos in Miami Beach, and now things there have turned deadly. Police say a 24-year-old woman visiting from Pennsylvania, she was found dead in her hotel room last week after being drugged and raped. Phil Keating is live in Miami Beach now. And Phil, things went from bad to worst. What's the latest?
Absolutely. Well, the last 2 nights, I've got to say, have been significantly less crowded and far less trouble. But this particular crime, by far, the absolute worst this spring break season out of more than 1,000 crimes that have been committed. Let's take a look at her picture. 24-year-old Christine Engelhardt, as you mentioned, from Pennsylvania, died in her hotel room down in South Beach. She traveled from Pennsylvania all by herself just to have some fun in the sun. Well, these are the 2 suspects who could soon be charged with her murder. 21-year-old Evoir Collier and 24-year-old Dorian Taylor, both from North Carolina. Detectives say they have admitted drugging Engelhardt with a green pill, going to her hotel room, then raping her and stealing her credit cards. Hours later, she was found dead. Both men were in court Monday charged with burglary, sexual battery, petty theft, and fraudulent use of a credit card. Whether murder ends up being added here depends on the medical examiner's cause of death conclusion, and toxicology tests will determine that to determine whether it was the green pill itself that caused her death. And typically, those toxicology tests take 4 to 6 weeks. Well, there's been more than 1,000 people arrested, half of them from out of state this season that started in early February, and more than 100 weapons have been confiscated. The city declared a state of emergency on Saturday. That includes an 8 p.m. curfew, which goes Thursday through Sunday. So right now the curfew has been for the past 2 nights midnight. Tomorrow night, the 8 p.m. curfew goes back into effect, and we shall see how big the crowds get down here this weekend.
All right, keep us posted. Thank you, Phil.
Vice President Harris now breaking traditions, snubbing the military when boarding her government ride on Air Force Two. What she was omitting and the reaction because of it. Talk about that in a moment. Dana?
Plus, forget about nap time. Now it's all about raising the wokest baby, a racial justice guide for toddlers. Up next.
Vice President Kamala Harris under fire for repeatedly failing to salute the military when boarding Air Force Two. Several videos of the vice president walking past the honor guard have gained traction on social media. Critics call it disgraceful that she would break the tradition of showing respect for service members that began with President Ronald Reagan and continued through his predecessors, including Joe Biden and Mike Pence.
I wonder why. You know?
Don't know. I'm waiting for the video.
I would love
here.
for someone to ask.
Hold it.
All right, I'm waiting.
Five more steps. Oh, shoot. Okay. So much for that.
By the way, in that video in Jacksonville when she came down, did you see the second guy standing there? Was the tallest, biggest man, like maybe bigger than Tyrus. I was like, rewind. Let's see that.
And we're a day away from Thursday, which is a day away from Tyrus. TT.
I know. I love that. I love that. So we want to talk about this because the Washington Post is raising some eyebrows after publishing a guide to social justice for toddlers, suggesting it's never too early to start teaching your children about implicit bias and racial stereotypes. Carly Shimkus has more on this. I mean, teaching kids to be good people, that's not bad.
Social justice for toddlers. So there are a whole slew of toys and tools aimed at teaching babies about the Black Lives Matter movement and the Me Too movement. There is drag queen story time, children's books called Anti-Racist Baby, Woke Baby, because according to 2 psychologists that are quoted in this article, children start to develop bias as young as 3 months old. But well before they even know their name, they are already passing judgment. Now, I think that most people would agree that children are the most wonderful, pure form of humanity that walks this planet. They don't care who they play with. They just want to play. Adults can learn a whole lot about acceptance from watching children. So I just wonder if race and gender are the focus of every tool, every toy that you give a child. Do those children then start to look at people based on their race and gender first, rather than just people as equals?
What, you said 3 months?
3 months old.
What was this? Was this an article?
Bundle of joy.
Was this an article in The Onion, Carly?
It was not.
This is not April 1st, right? So it's not April Fool's?
No,
3
not
months.
yet.
So I have this little list here of what babies should be able to do at 3 months. Can I tell you?
Yes.
Raise your head and chest when you're lying on your stomach, grasp an object, and smile at other people.
Yeah. That sounds about right. That sounds like the level a 3-month-old should be at. Now, I do have to say that some of the suggestions in this article are great. I think it's wonderful that a little black girl can read a book and see somebody that looks like her that is a princess. But this is also more than that. This really feels like this is geared towards adults who are hyper-focused on race, so much so that they are worried that their baby is already racist. And you can see where this could quickly become political. And I really think that we do need to stop politicizing children. Politics is such a big part of schools now, where, you know, in the Oregon Department of Education, they're talking about how the subject of math is rooted in racism and white supremacy, because you have to show your work and there's a focus on getting the right answer, which is one of the most racist things that I've ever heard. So I think, you know, politics in school has gone too far.
So here's the quote. Children develop implicit bias as early as 3 months old, right? And at 4 years old, they're categorizing and developing stereotypes, right?
I just completely disagree. I've seen a lot of kids.
I think, Carly, at that age, I was more worried about my brother eating my food.
I think that is spot on. Those are the worries that are going through 4-year-olds' minds, and you know, when they're getting their next meal and when they're watching their next Disney movie.
Well, Carly, thank you for informing us. I wonder if we just sound old, though. Like, do we not know what we're talking about? So we have a colleague.
Sorry, go ahead.
We have a colleague that's getting that's going to have a baby next week, and the baby gift I got is it's called Baby Quantum Physics. And that's the book that I offered. I think that would be...
That's great.
I needed to read it myself.
Funny. Phineas Farcar, I think I said the name right. He said, to quote Pink Floyd, leave those kids alone. 26 past the hour now. I want to get back to the border on this issue about the migrant children. Overwhelming Border Patrol. Biden administration turning to the city of Dallas for help. Going to take you there live in a moment. Dana, show you where they're moving some of those kids. And President Biden and Democrats are calling for immediate action on gun reform after the deadly mass shooting in Colorado on Monday. The governor will join us live in a moment. We'll talk to him after this. Paying the city of Dallas to house about 1,500 migrant children inside of a convention center where they could stay there for more than a month. Casey Stiegel's live in Dallas for more on this today. Good morning, Casey.
Bill, good morning to you. The lease here at the Dallas Convention Center, in fact, is for 75 total days. This location is designed to house migrant teen boys, specifically ages 15 to 17 years old. Officials say there are roughly 1,500 of them inside the convention center now, which is about half because it has a maximum capacity of around 3,000. The site is run by FEMA, HHS, and the ORR, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, while religious organizations volunteer to help with some of the logistics like COVID testing and toiletries.
We have at our disposal quite an extensive network of volunteers, of pastoral care, of resources to bring to bear. We can sort out the thorny issues later, but when there's people who are there, we want to help.
Meanwhile, late yesterday, the Pentagon announced it received a request from HHS to use facilities at both Fort Bliss and Joint Base San Antonio now to house juvenile migrants. Those logistics are still currently being worked out. Bill, Dana.
Thank you, Casey. 75 days it is. We'll see then. Yeah. Thank you, Casey.
President Biden is considering bypassing Congress with executive action on gun control after 2 mass shootings in 1 week. The latest attack on Monday. A gunman opened fire in a Colorado grocery store, killing 10 people, including a police officer. Colorado Governor Jared Polis, he joins us now. Governor, thank you so much. I know that it's been a very heartbreaking week for you as the governor is trying to lead the state through that. What would you like to see happen? Is there a law in your mind that could pass that could both be constitutional and deal with these problems to prevent such shootings?
Well, Dana, we in Colorado, in Boulder, appreciate just the love and support from so many of your viewers, from people across the country and across the world. This is a really hard time for the family and friends of the 10 people we lost. Some of them are friends of friends. It's a small community at the end of the day, and I know people who knew some of the 10 people who we lost that tragic day 2 days ago. Look, the facts are just being reconstructed. I think we'll all know soon enough exactly what happened. There were a lot of eyewitnesses. There's a lot of interviews that'll be done. I'm confident that the perpetrator will be held fully accountable under the law. And of course, we'll look forward to what lessons we can learn about what intervention was missed. Were there signs where this young man could have been helped or prevented from taking this path? And those are things that we'll learn in the coming days and weeks.
Have you come across that where you have families who might be concerned about the mental health of one of their loved ones, but they don't know what to do? They don't know how to prevent something like this from happening?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've, I think, again, we'll know exactly what the case is here soon. But it sounds like from some of the initial interviews, the brother, the parents, some of them had, concerns about this young man. There is help out there. And in our state, we have a hotline that we've been getting out and posting about. And in other states, there's other resources. I think that's one of the most important things. If you think that your son, your daughter is a danger to themselves or others, there is a recourse. They do need help, and I know a lot of parents in that situation just don't know what to do because they might be facing a son or daughter that's losing grasp of reality. There are professionals who can help, and it's really important that people in that situation get the help they need.
About a year ago, you signed a law that would eliminate the death penalty in Colorado. Any regrets about that?
Well, part of the problem we had with the death penalty, and I'm fine with having a death penalty if it's applied equally. We had the Aurora Theater shooting perpetrator. He killed 12 people. The jury didn't give him the death penalty. And we had people that killed 1 or 2 people that were getting the death penalty on death row. So it didn't make any sense. This guy probably wouldn't have gotten the death penalty. I mean, if you're going to have a death penalty, you got to have the criteria and say, okay, is it, if you kill how many people do you get it? It simply really destroys the public trust if somebody who kills 12 people doesn't get it and somebody who kills 1 person gets it. So that would be my advice to any states with regards to the death penalty.
I saw last night some video from a constituent of yours, somebody who said, of course they love Colorado. I love Colorado, you know that. But he said, looking at Columbine, Aurora, and now this King Super shooting in Boulder, that there is a dark, sad reality in Colorado. You as the governor, as the leader of the state, what would you like him to know?
Well, all of those events are really seared on the national consciousness. I wasn't governor, of course, during Columbine or Aurora. We did have a shooting at the STEM school recently. Look, I think this is an example of how, as a state, as a nation, we really need to look out for one another. Really look out for your brother and sister, your son or daughter. If you see those problem signs, seek the help that's needed. And make sure that we can prevent this kind of horrific disaster from happening again anywhere.
Governor Jared Polis, I know you're busy, and we thank you for your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very interesting to get his reaction on how you can help people get help.
And I think that it comes back to it that if you are worried, don't just think they're going to grow out of it, but you're worried that something might happen to your family if you report it. I think that's where some real progress could be made.
It gets complicated when you can't get to that person. You can't reach them to lead them to that help.
Good, Governor. Thank you.
Yeah, 22 minutes now before the hour. Sheriff in Texas near the Mexican border saying the drug cartel is using migrant kids to sneak smugglers into the U.S. They're making a lot of money from this. Former DEA special agent has the experience. He'll join us in a moment. Boat traffic clogged in the waters of the Suez Canal in Egypt could have a significant financial impact. A container ship has run aground. It's going to be there for days. The effect of this in a moment.
Yes, I'm stuck in the middle with you.
Look at some top stories we're following this hour. First, a spring breaker from Indiana charged with disorderly conduct and violating a curfew during the raucous partying in Miami Beach over the weekend.
Biden administration pushing Obamacare enrollment by 3 months to August 15, saying the pandemic has changed many things for many Americans and they may now need more time to evaluate their coverage.
And the Postal Service laying out a 10-year plan to cut costs, proposing a longer delivery window for first-class mail. For more on these and other stories, just download the Fox News app, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to foxnews.com/apps.
Law enforcement in U.S. border towns now say the steady stream of migrants trying to cross into the country is the perfect cover for a drug runner. Here's what one sheriff from a southern Texas county told the New York Post. So now with the family units coming across, you might have a mother come in, say a mother with 3 children. Well, the cartels say you can cross with 1 child. We're going to take 2 children. And we're going to use those 2 children to smuggle 2 others and pretend that those are family units, end quote. Derek Maltz, former special agent in charge, the DEA Special Ops Division, with me now. And Derek, good morning to you. You heard that quote there. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely, Bill. I mean, the cartels are a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. They're going to exploit the weaknesses with the open, radical border policies. and they're going to take advantage not only to get the migrants in and get paid millions of dollars, but to smuggle the drugs that are killing our citizens at record levels.
Well, here is Tom Homan. I don't know if you heard him earlier in the hour. He was hot on fire. This was his issue. Here's what he said about that.
There's over 1,000 a day. Border Patrol estimates 1,000 a day are getting away. So there's over 30,000 that are getting by the Border Patrol in a month. Who are they? Do they have COVID? Are they criminals? Are they carrying drugs, fentanyl, opioids? That's what makes this a national security crisis.
Yeah. How much money are they making, do you think, Derek, based on all that?
Millions of dollars a week just from the migrants, but they're making billions of dollars. You saw Chapo Guzman on Forbes' richest people in the world. But here's the bigger picture, Bill. The Chinese are using the Mexican cartels as proxies to destabilize America by killing our youth, right? They're providing the chemicals. They're moving the money for the cartels. It's just like Iran uses Hezbollah as proxies. This is a national security threat, and unfortunately, the mainstream media is not covering the topic. They're covering it up. Tom Homan's an expert. He knows what he's talking about. Brandon Judd is an expert from Border Patrol. He said that Trump had the migrant crisis, resolved, basically with the migrant protection protocols that have been eliminated. So we have a very serious situation, but the kids are being exploited with the human traffickers and the drug smuggling, and it's really, really scary times. They're flooding the zone so they can distract
Sorry
them.
about the interruption. Homan said that they destroyed the programs that were set up for them in 2 weeks. 2 weeks' time. Here's a quote: anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 for every single body, and you put a number to it, and you can figure out how much money they are making.
Right. I mean, you look at some of the special interest aliens like the Russians or the Middle Easterners, they're getting like $9,000, $10,000 a person. You look at the Guatemalans, many of them are poor, and they're taking $3,000 from them. But here's the thing, they're tagging them like cattle. They're tracking them so they can get paid. And if they don't get paid, then the families that are left behind, they suffer. They get hurt. They get kidnapped. They get killed.
Our policies are feeding that.
Absolutely. Yeah, you open border, come into America, everything's free. What about all the homeless in America? What about the National Guard sleeping on the floors in the garages? But we're going to spend $86 million on hotels to put the migrants. The DOD is now opening up their bases to house these migrants. It's absolutely out of control. And there's a reason they sent FEMA down there. FEMA is for emergencies and disasters. So don't listen to the disconnected politicians in Washington. They're covering up what's happening on the border.
I just don't think many people thought that you can make more money smuggling human beings than you could on drugs, because that was where the attention was for so many years. Derek, final comment. Got to roll.
Bill, here's the bottom line. Terrorists are tapping into the resources of crime, and these terrorist organizations like Hezbollah and others around the world are taking total advantage, working with the cartels, and we have to start stepping up the game. We must declare them as terrorists in Mexico and start treating them as terrorists, because they're killing our kids at record levels.
Derek Maltz, former DEA. Thank you, sir, for coming on today. Appreciate your time.
A woman missing for more than 2 weeks in the U.S. Virgin Islands.